The Conservatives, MP Chambers, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Welcome to our witnesses. It's been a fantastic discussion. We often wish we had more time with all of you to explore. I have a few questions. I'll start with Mr. Macbeth. When was the last kind of, large market housing correction in Canada?
So the last time that the housing market corrected substantially in Canada was in the early 1990s, and interest rates went up to 13%, and there was an overall correction. I don't know exactly the percentage, but I think it was in the 20 to 30% range. One of the notable iconic events was the collapse of Olympia in York, the large conglomerate, because they had an enormous amount of debt.
How long did it take for the market to recover from, that correction? Was it 5 years? Was it 10 years? When did prices kind of get back to where they were?
I think that the prices in 1999 were similar to the prices in 1990. So it was a long period of lower to flat prices, and then this new bubble started to form shortly after 2000.
And so we've had more than 2 decades of price appreciation, and in fact, a couple periods of time within this 2 decades, some very significant price appreciation without any real meaningful or large-scale correction for a longer period of time, right?
That's right. Both Canada and Australia escaped the corrections that happened in 2008, 2009, and those 2 countries have the most extended housing bubbles and house prices at this time. So it was considered lucky at the time, but I would say maybe it was unlucky that we didn't have a healthy correction in 2008, 2009.
Have you ever seen debt to income ratios as high as they are in Canada?
So no, the simple answer is no. The preferred measure I like is debt to GDP, and that there's a few developed countries in the world that are in the same category as Canada, but Canada's right at the very top of the list in terms of private sector debt. Most of the discussion about debt, I'm sure in this committee and elsewhere, has been about government debt, but government debt is not nearly as dangerous as private sector debt. Private sector participants go bankrupt or get foreclosed, whereas governments somehow manage to carry on even if they're overly indebted.
Okay, thank you very much. Turning to the Canadian Real Estate Association briefly, what's happened to development charges? Do you track development charges across the country or in particular markets over the last 10, 20 years?
We don't follow them that closely. No, that would be more the home builders who would do that.
Okay. What about, land transfer tax in Toronto? Do you know how much is it in land transfer tax in Toronto today for a $1 home?
Again, we don't really track those metrics, except that we know that they haven't gone down, but Ms. Keesmaat would be able to answer that better than I can.
Oh, sure. Ms. Keesmaat, what's the land transfer tax in Toronto?
I don't actually know that off the top of my head, but I can speak to the development charges. Land transfer tax is actually similar, but what's happened with development charges, as municipal governments have been reticent to raise property taxes, they've been increasing the development charges to create a user pay model, which means the development charges on a unit can be upwards of $20,000 to $40,000, depending on the scale and the size of the unit, which is pretty much doubled over the course of the past 10 years.
Thank you very much. Land transfer tax in Toronto is about $33,000 on $1 million property. That's double everywhere else in Ontario. Property taxes in Toronto are much lower on a kind of any measure you look at it. In other municipalities in Toronto, the city's actually subsidizing low property tax rates with an astronomical land transfer tax, and that hurts first-time purchasers, and even they have first-time buyer incentives. But it still only brings it down to about $25,000. Ms. McIsaac, you mentioned, and I want to give you the opportunity here in a very quick period of time, where do these people who are housing insecure, where do they go if they are pushed out of a home?
Ms. McIsaac, please. Thank you.
When people are pushed out of their home, depending on their own circumstances, there's not a one single answer to that. People go to friends and family. They have their social safety net, which is social capital. What we're seeing increasingly are people that are now making use of shelters. So as you get to the lower end, people may try to get something lower in the market, but that's getting harder and harder to find. In a city like Toronto, a one-bedroom is impossible to find under $1,500.
Thank you very much. I'll just say, in my riding, they go to motels.
Yeah.
And that's become an issue in my riding. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Chambers. We are moving to the Liberal.